Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Paul.
Yes, good to have you. And we're going to be talking about, mask. No, not for the doctor wearing a mask in the operating room. They still do that, and I would still do it too because it makes more sense. But universal wearing a mask to stop a virus that they can't stop with a mask, spending billions of dollars on it and rattling all that nonsense. I just wonder, what is the motivation? I've always had trouble with all this nonsense until it finally dawned on me and other people started saying, the purpose of the nonsense that you can't make any sense of is not an accident, it's not coincidental, it's not just stupidity, there's a little bit of that, but it's mainly to cause chaos, because if you want a revolution, is what the cultural Marxists admit to, just bring on turmoil. They're doing a very good job in the economic bubble machine. So they want turmoil, they want to get people all confused, and why are they doing this, and what's the purpose of all this? Because the Marxists, as they had been, even from Karl Marx's day, is get it all messed up. Even if you have to tolerate a little capitalism along the way, get it messed up and confuse people and bring it on, because that will open up the door to, the introduction of their idea of the Marxist state. And they're still here. It's different now than it was, 100 years ago. Their presentation is different. And I think the term cultural is very important, because the original Marx revolution was basically more economic. So this cultural revolution, that sort of helps me understand why they do it. But it still comes across to me, Chris, it's pretty stupid, and it's a money-making machine, and it's pretty amazing. It's still amazing that so many people get frightened and are so gullible that they march. And even now, you still run into people, they won't take their mask off. It's sort of an identity for them to wear their mask. Chris.
Yes, and there was a big opinion piece in, of all places, the New York Times, Dr. Paul, that we noticed, and we weren't the only ones to notice it. And it was, the headline couldn't have been clearer. The mask mandates did nothing. Will any lessons be learned? Now, the mask mandates did damage. They didn't do nothing. Nothing would have been preferable to the damage that they have done. So, but we'll let that slide for now. As for lessons, the lesson that should have been learned is that government has to be kept out of our personal, economic, medical, decisions. But, people do not want to learn that lesson, unfortunately. The government can have a proper role, and that's to protect you from force, from fraudsters. Unfortunately, our government today is the primary source of force and fraud. So we have it all backwards. That's the lesson to be learned. But again, this is a very tough lesson to those who grew up and want to depend on government, even though it takes them from crisis to crisis and rips them off. And worse, with COVID, this was your health now that they are damaging. So, that's the lesson to be learned. But again, it's one that people have a hard time accepting.
The question is, did they learn a lesson? And they, as the way I understand it, are the perpetrators of this and have promoted these policies, the people in the government doing all things. So they were pushing it. And the question they asked, did they learn anything? And the Times article was hinting that maybe there are a few people, it was a crack in the door, and eventually maybe more people will wise up, but there's still a lot of support for it. But they essentially don't learn enough. The perpetrators, because their goals, like I mentioned a minute ago, may be quite different than dealing with illness, because obviously they don't aren't dealing with illness in a scientific fashion. So I think they haven't learned, because all they're doing is dealing in politics. So many of them accept the principle that it's okay to lie in politics, and the more you lie and the better you lie, the better it is for them. So they don't learn anything other than, if they learn something, they learn how to control the people more. So it's a negative learning as far as trying to figure out what's happening. But what about we? Have we learned anything? We, the people who, try to resist this, try to point it out, the doctors who lost their jobs, the teachers that lost their jobs, and the journalists that lost their jobs and their dignity. So have they learned a lot? They already knew so much, and I guess they keep wincing about it. Well, should I have done it? Now I lost all my credentials and all. And I think if you look at the people who knew the truth and they were preaching the truth, I think they learned a lot, that government was more authoritarian than they ever dreamed, and that the problem is excessive government, because it certainly isn't a medical idea, a medical issue on whether the masks were necessary and good, and because there was no evidence that they were doing any good, and more evidence now than ever that they were worthless. It was just a gimmick to get people to obey, which fits into the scenario of the Marxist movement. So I think there's the people on our side that tried to resist. I think in some ways we did have some learning, even though most everybody in the we position, we're already resisting government interference. But I think more so now than ever, and they have maybe understand the enemy a little bit more and what they have to do. So the people still, are looking for the answers, and I think there's been an educational process. And when you look at the numbers of people who now are disinclined to believe government when they have these mandates, whether it's the war issue, the financial interest, or even the medical issues of how do you deal with a cold virus. So I think getting the right perspective, that has been gained, but the people who have suffered, they're going to not immediately get back all their benefits that they had before. And besides, just think of the people that made billions of dollars over this whole mandate business, whether they were masks or vaccines or whatever. I mean, and to say billions of dollars is not excessive. It was literally billions of dollars. So if there were to be justice, they should be held accountable and pay back. But guess what? The Congress, in all their great wisdom, and it's continuing, is take away their responsibility, their liability, and excuse them because it's so dangerous rushing drugs through. We have to do it, and we can't be certain, so we don't want to be liable. So the government says, go ahead and do it anyway. Do it anyway. That's the lesson I hope they learn. But right now, governments, big corporations are always looking for exemptions, and they have way too many already, and they're not held accountable.
That's exactly right. And accountability is one thing that is sorely lacking, and it's not helping us because look at all the failed wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, all these failure, and everybody just goes on with their business. Oh well, trillions gone. And COVID too. Look how everybody just moved on. Ukraine was, the new shiny thing that took everybody's attention away. And, as of now, they're just walking away scot-free. And this environment attracts bigger criminals. They see the cost is low. They see, look, you could get away with these crimes. You could strike it so rich and nobody will even do anything to you. Thomas Jefferson had an excellent quote. So, nothing new is new under the sun. But he said, when governments fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And today, the politicians do not fear the people at all. I mean, look at President's Day. I'm not big on photo opportunities for presidents, but he's on President's Day. He's over in Ukraine handing out $500 million. Meanwhile, here in our country, we had this major catastrophe in Ohio, and he's, nothing. And that 500 million was just an appetizer. Today, we hear that another 10 billion is being prepared for Ukraine. So not only do our politicians not fear the people, they actively do not like us. I mean, they're basically telling us without telling us. So, this is not a good environment for liberty. It's, you have to, now you're really on your own. People think about without government, you're on your own. With government, you're on your own. You got to survive this somehow. So, yeah, accountability is a big one, Dr. Paul, and we're a long ways away to seeing it.
Fear is an interesting term and a subject, because the enemy, the Marxists, the authoritarians, the pseudo-capitalists, they all use the issue of fear as a tool to get people to go along with the government. That's how they get them to go into war. They're about to attack us. And then they paint on people, and they did it with medicine, and they do it with people who oppose military wars. You're unpatriotic. You don't care. We have to fight because we want to defend the Constitution and take care of the troops, and on and on. But they use fear, and they scare the people. That happened with COVID. The fear mongering was very strong. And here, probably the bottom line is going to be, yes, it was a pretty bad season for bad colds. And the statistics of the number of people who die, who have had COVID with, just more conventional treatment, very, very few people, less than 0.5% of the people die from it. So eventually these numbers will come out. But the use of fear is the big thing, and it's hard to calm people down because, I can't take a chance. I can't take a chance. Maybe these vaccines don't work, but I'm not taking a chance. The government wants me to take it. And all they have to do is start looking at a realistic way how much myocarditis and pericarditis has existed, how many people have died, but they get erased from the rolls. When they wanted to get people to take vaccines, the tests were geared to finding more vulnerable people, more tests, give them more shots. But then when they started realizing that, there were complications, we want less information. Don't record it, because we don't want them to think maybe the booster shots aren't good for them. And so it's manipulation, because truth is the strongest weapon we have, and of course the most threatening thing to they who want to promote this, because they can't stand the truth. The other factor that is deceiving for people is what is the role of government. And Chris, you've already mentioned the role of government should be there to protect our liberties. And when somebody comes and commits violence against you, you should have an ability to have self-defense. But right now, government is geared to scare the people, and then the government steps forward, and we will make you safe. In a military way, in a social way, we'll protect you against these, philosophies, the books that might teach free market economics and on. But the theory that the government should make us safe opens up the door to anything and everything. Because everything we do, every step we take, it's risky. That's why you have OSHA. They're going to take care of you every step of the way. So almost every agency of government is designed, and they use the argument, we want to make you safe. In foreign policy, expenditures, if you want to balance the budget and cut the spending, but how many people are going to suffer if we don't continue to do our good work and interfere even more in the economy and continue to do what we're doing now, building the bubble bigger than ever. So I think people should be cautious about accepting the idea when they're promoting a lot of fear, get a little suspicious. And if they say we're going to make you safe, get very suspicious, because that's the tool they use to get people to go along.
Excellent, Dr. Paul. I will conclude with my thoughts. You have it right. The pattern is, they operate with a very familiar pattern, and for the people that can see it, you can't unsee it. Everything that comes next you'll be able to handle it better once you see the pattern. And Dr. Paul said it, they scare you, number one. When you're afraid, you're going to make, you're more likely to make not good decisions. So they want to keep you in fear. And from their perspective, it's to grab power and money, tell you what to do, and become rich while they're doing it. And, it's not just the politicians, it's their friends, their donors. Every crisis, not only is the politician there, but there's a company behind them that's ready to clean up, no matter what it is, And their only job after that is to just censor those, who tell the truth. And but look how the truth always comes out. The truth about Iraq came out. There were no weapons of mass destructions. The truth about COVID is out. Lockdowns didn't work. The masks didn't work. Obviously, New York Times is willing to admit it. The vaccines didn't work. They're not vaccines, at least. So the truth does come out. The problem is, when it comes out, people are already on to the next scam. They're focused on how they're being scammed. We're being scammed with Ukraine. So they're already on to that. This is big news that the masks didn't work. There were cops forcing masks onto people's faces. That it didn't work. And, this is just going to go, it'll go by. We're mentioning it here, but it's more to educate not only ourselves, but our viewers to recognize how government works today. This is not how government should work, but today, this is how it works. And when you can see that, you can take better care of yourself and your family. And bonus, you could speak the truth to others. They may not listen to you, but you do your part. Don't worry about if they listen to you or believe you. You just do the good thing, speak the truth, and then move on with your life.
Very good, Chris. The mask is a big issue, has been a big issue. It's never happened in this country before like this because it didn't make economic sense. It doesn't make any social sense either. It doesn't make any financial sense either. But it does make sense, like I mentioned earlier. If you're trying to promote authoritarianism and Marxism, it makes sense to them because, this scares the people and it will cause disruption. But also, the masks were a distraction. They said if you do wear the mask, we'll have greatly reduced it. We have all kinds of social distancing and things like that, and that's how we're going to prevent it. And then we will give you the vaccine, and that's how we're going to make you safe. But also, I resented it personally and philosophically that what they've done though is. They have attacked the practice of medicine. Private practice of medicine has really had a setback here these last couple of years by the government moving in and saying, oh, natural immunity, that is so dumb, you're going to be kicked off the staff if you ever say that word again. So it was an attack on private practice of medicine, which is once again a major issue. And when you think about what's going on in this country in medicine, the most expensive in the world and the most authoritarian part run by corporations and the doctor-patient relationship being undermined every single day. So it's a lot of things that went on, but I see signs that people are starting to wake up and they'd like to see more people come around and say that the solution can come in understanding what liberty is all about, what sound money is all about, what non-intervention in all areas of our lives is all about, and live in a voluntary society. Believe me, things could be a lot better. And I think the majority of the people, if they had the true offer of a choice, I know what they would pick. They'd pick peace and liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.